It turns out that Nellie was with N-Corp all along, where Catherine, Linton, and others were merely her unknowing pawns. Dante could see that Nellie was right about El King Heathcliff. He'd already disappeared into the rooftops. Virgilius kept most of the wild hunt occupied, their ability to create time dilation fields around themselves, and the damned dozen. I suspect that Nellie was carried with them, as she was unlikely to be immune from the time dilation field's effects. The last of Heathcliff's hopes. He believed that it was over. Then he imagined an endless vortex of colours mixing into a sludge. Grey over a heart that once gleamed violet. Red paint splashing faded colours, again and again, until there was nothing but blackness, unseen by anyone. The colour of the pitch-black night, the colour of the back streets of District 20. Sinclair recognised this as the 6th lightning strike, based on the power outage. Dante noticed that Heathcliff was gone, asking where he went. Honglu noticed this as well. He disappeared. While he couldn't be seen, Heathcliff, he could be heard. Like part of them was still there, but the rest was elsewhere. Then we see what Nellie really thinks of Heathcliff. Seeing this as a predictable ending, he returned to the back streets, where he belongs. Oh, so all that talk about begging him not to deny every memory they shared together, that her pity was genuine when they abused him, and that she wished that he'd live his best life. All lies. She was no different than those that abused him. They were just more honest about it. Only at this point does she mock his cowardice and despair, even though she had a part in that, out of bitterness and resentment. So he had every reason to deny his memories of her. The only one that showed him genuine affection and care was Catherine. Heathcliff didn't want to hear any more of it. Then Nellie mocked him for not changing one bit, even with his present company, seeing little difference between Heathcliff the Elk King and Heathcliff the Devil, the end being largely the same. Dante thought that Nellie had her head right up her bitter. They disagreed with her, even if she didn't understand them. Then Heathcliff was hurting. He didn't want to be there anymore. It turned out that he wasn't in the back streets as Nellie believed, but in the memory that led him to leave Wuthering Heights. Or more specifically, the part where Catherine said that she must marry Linton, as it would degrade her to marry Heathcliff. Heathcliff recognised this moment. They were talking about him in that room. He got out of there at that point, because his heart would crack and fall apart until it completely shattered, if he stayed to listen to this. Then he heard the sound of a clock that made him remember to stay on the path and not go somewhere that he didn't want to go. Time passed regardless of his suffering. He asked himself if waiting could change anything. The clock sound kept growing louder, so he decided to wait this time. Apparently the reason for Catherine marrying Linton was to help Heathcliff, to make him a better person. Okay, so she meant well, but it would still be too painful for him and would cause both of you more harm than good. Even if it's not the previous gold digger motivation that it previously seemed like it was. She didn't want him to know the immense love she had for him. Heathcliff didn't want to shut that door this time. Fear was taking hold, but it didn't let it... It didn't stop him this time. He apologized to Kathy for disappointing her, because he was too afraid to hear her true feelings. He understood that this future would never come to pass in their world. His hesitation wrecked that. He didn't just hurt her, he hurt Nellie as well. He had to start fixing what he wrecked. Then he found himself in a white room with a door, which opened to the outside. Then Dante said that they disagreed because they didn't want Heathcliff to live the rest of his life in regret. It's why, despite everything, they want them to continue to the rooftop. Meanwhile, in another memory in the past, Catherine spoke of those flowers blooming in places like desolate moors or steep cliffsides. The former being where Wuthering Heights is. They appear more lonely than anything else in the world. Heathcliff was silent at this. Catherine then asked why she loved that flower the most. It's because all other flowers lose their colours and fade away as they wither away. This is even if you pay to restore their colours. But that flower, even as it withers and wilts, remains the same colour. So when he's gone, she'll dry those flowers and decorate her room with them. Heathcliff told her not to say anything so foolish as making rings of flowers. Why would he ever leave her? Then he started to snap back to reality, feeling so stupid. He never once realized what she meant by those words. Everything she said was an expression of love. Then he reappeared back at the staircase before the rooftop, much to the relief of Dante. Yes, they were most relieved. Ishmael wanted to know where he went. He disappeared when the lightning struck. Hong Lu asked if he was okay. He said, no, it hurt like hell. But he would move past Nellie and make his way to the rooftop. And this was the last thing that she was expecting. Heathcliff vowed that Earl King Heathcliff would not be his future. Earl King Heathcliff and Nellie had access to the knowledge of every parallel world, yet made the same choices anyway. He decided to choose differently, thanking her for looking after them, understanding that it must have been difficult. Then Faust pointed out to him that of all of the individuals named in Catherine's will, all three of them, he's the only one who's still alive. As Linton was turned into raw genetic material to bring Earl King Heathcliff back to that world in a more stable form. Technically suicide. And Hindley, as a distortion, was killed by them, although in that case it was self-defense. So, at least on paper, he owns Wuthering Heights, and so that would mean Heathcliff is her boss. Now, Heathcliff might be as bright as the back streets of District 20, closest to its nest, but even he could understand what this meant. He decided to give her a new future. Her freedom was hers, so she can start writing her story as she would want to, write her own fate or whatever else she wished to do. He then continued to the rooftop. Nellie collapsed on the floor. She made an odd noise that was a mixture of laughter and sobbing. Normally, it'd be a bad thing to lose your job, but considering that she was trapped by contracts, where it was implied that the reason for it being made was lost over the generations, this wasn't a punishment for her. It was actually a reward. She could hardly believe that she's free to go. Then Heathcliff looked at the others and asked what they're doing down there, telling them to come up to the rooftop. Dante didn't know what Heathcliff was thinking. This was the first time since they've travelled with him that... well... he didn't think that hard. What he needed to do was clear to him. And what he needed to do was smash his own skull in. Specifically Earl King Heathcliff's. Earl King Heathcliff was patiently waiting for them on the rooftop. Faust expecting this. They could feel that his powerful and oppressive energy was more ferocious since they last fought. Likely due to a combination of the golden bar and the pure form of humanity. Whatever that means, as the definition of pure can be quite varied. It's why there's such a thing as, or rather, a concept as the purity spiral, where nothing is ever pure enough, where the definition keeps getting more and more extreme, and any that try to moderate it is seen as the enemy, and it only stops when someone makes it stop. Whatever N-Corp's idea of pure humanity, it's likely to be part of some twisted ideology, considering the experiments that went on in District 14 and now under Wuthering Heights. Then there's the Nagel und Hammer, with their crusades to hunt down heretics, or more specifically, any with prosthetic parts. Earl King Heathcliff saw them stumble up the stairs and lowered Catherine's coffin to the rooftop floor. Heathcliff saw this as a sorry ending to that tale. They had no idea the lengths that he's had to go through to destroy all those variants of Hindley and Linton, pushing himself to the brink over and over again. He saw this as his heaven that's finally within his reach. Heathcliff saw this as a bad joke. Seeing this show as his heaven? He's actually in the middle of hell. Earl King Heathcliff then spoke of what happened when Nellie told him that Catherine was dead. He began to see her face in all things. Even looking at himself brought back memories. Everything became an unending reminder of who she was. That she once existed, only to be forever lost because of him. Okay, I wouldn't take all the credit. She didn't make her feelings towards you clear. She didn't understand that he didn't want mind games, he wanted it spoken plainly. So to just go on living, he had to think of nothing but a single wish. That burning, unchanging desire. Heathcliff had an expression that roughly translated to, I don't understand this muppet, and he's a version of me. Then he understood what he meant. That Earl King Heathcliff's mission was to kill every Heathcliff in every world, which Earl King Heathcliff saw as the ultimate proof of his love. During his travels through the multiverse, he met many versions of himself. Some were wrathful, some begged for mercy, some begged for their lives, but in the end, they all admitted that they had to perish for the good of Catherine, and willingly let him kill them. He claimed to have no pleasure in his work, to slay those poor wretched souls. They all died alone and unloved in their worlds. Apparently no one wept for his death, so he buried them, to shed his tears for them, understanding silence will be the only thing that will exist when his own demise came. Heathcliff saw his method as all wrong. He wanted to make Catherine happy, but even Earl King Heathcliff the one who saw the possibilities of the multiverse and a number of different variations, missed something. Earl King Heathcliff wanted to know what he meant. Heathcliff asked if he said that in every world Catherine and Heathcliff were destined to be miserable, but they could have been happy if they just not missed the smallest key to happiness. Earl King Heathcliff didn't believe that any such world existed, believing that as long as they exist, Catherine will. Heathcliff told him that it's not to do with their existence. The problem was that he wanted to believe that it was that. All he had to do was get over his own embarrassment, his fear. He just had to open the door and talk to her. Earl King Heathcliff then asked how he'll prove this theory when they have nothing left to prove it with. That's his Catherine. Yes, the Catherine from his world was long gone. Heathcliff agreed that he couldn't change the past, and he can't prove it to him, believing none of that matters in the end, that his Catherine might never wake up, no matter what he did, but he's there anyway, asking if he understands what this means. Earl King Heathcliff was silent, giving away nothing. Heathcliff told him that they're both wretches, but he refused to break as his variant did, leaping from world to world, killing all those that he saw as the cause of his misery over and over again, which did nothing for his broken heart. Earl King Heathcliff was still as fatalistic as ever, seeing his speech as ringing hollow, that the outcome has already been decided. He would kill him, and then move on to the next world to do the same. Heathcliff asked, what was he waiting for? He then pulled the golden bar off the roof of Wuthering Heights, where it was installed as a lightning rod. Earl King Heathcliff saw this as meaningless, as he can't destroy the golden bar. But that wasn't Heathcliff's plan. His plan was to stop it from working. Earl King Heathcliff found it ridiculous, as he meant to kill him? Heathcliff made it clear that he was going to stab himself with the golden bar, as he wanted. This was what Earl King Heathcliff in this case didn't see coming. Heathcliff didn't understand why, but the golden bar was imbued with lightning, and that was a necessary part of his plan, seeing that if he drained its powers, it would likely mess whatever the grand scheme is. Dante asked how he even knew that. Heathcliff wasn't educated, but he was good at figuring things out, which explained how his Seven Association identity was able to actually do his job. Dante cried out at him to stop him from doing this, but it was too late. He stabbed himself with the golden bar, and this was even considering that this would be a temporary setback for him, thanks to what Dante could do. Heathcliff then tried to talk to Catherine, telling her that he's back, to please open the door. Ishmael questioned why he stabbed himself, asking if this is how he wanted it to end. Ishmael, you forget, Dante can undo this. It's because he needs Kathy in every corner of Wuthering Heights to hear his call. The golden bar connects the hearts together. He doesn't fully understand it. Sinclair didn't understand what he meant. Heathcliff saw that Catherine had become Wuthering Heights itself, however that happened. If Kathy and Nellie looked into the same mirror that Earl King Heathcliff looked into, and if he and Kathy felt the same all this time, he knew what choice she would make. From the moment that they set foot inside, Wuthering Heights kept pushing him away, while the diary continued to soothe him. He understood that neither of them were honest with each other. Sinclair wanted to know what he was on about. Then the diary flipped to the final page and it said, "Would you like to hear a story, Heathcliff? Long time ago, Josephine told me a little tale. She said that there was a deep, ancient river flowing beneath that manor. Every architect said that this was not a good place to build anything, let alone a house, that nothing should be built atop this hill. Wuthering Heights was built here, nevertheless, over the underseen Hypergean River. Ever since I was a child, I saw the ghost of my late mother wandering the halls of this manor." Then we have the flashback of Catherine asking Nellie if she could see that ghost. Nellie denied the existence of them, asking why she didn't take her nap as she asked her to. Catherine noticed that Josephine was seeing ghosts as well, who also believed that the former mistress would return to their side, due to the river flowing beneath their lands, which would bring her back there, should her duties there be complete. She'll allow her to drink from its waters. Catherine repeatedly saw that vision as she grew up, after Heathcliff left, after she lost the will to live. Nellie then brought her a mirror. Apparently she found an interesting mirror. It showed her some fascinating things. It could be said to be a magic mirror. She might enjoy such an invention. In that mirror, she saw different variations of herself and Heathcliff. She pulled Heathcliff to the utter abyss of desolation. He grew cold and unhappy, mired in an endless cycle of misfortune, where it was as if all paths led to this, regardless of what they did. Catherine asked if Nellie could see another ghost. Nellie saw this as her being ill. And the wind that was blowing through the windows was risking sickening her father. Catherine saw that the ghost was weeping tragically, and that she appeared so familiar. She needed to gaze into the mirror to find a single strand of possibility where Heathcliff could be happy. She did so for long enough until blood streamed down her face instead of tears. The ceaseless wailings were from a variant of her in the deepest of despair. None were like her. Apparently in that world, she considered herself Heathcliff's murderer. They were just like her, desperately searching every world via the mirror, but each time it's a tragic end. Suffering is all that's left. There's nothing worth living for. Catherine asked, why can't any Heathcliff be even slightly happy? The variant of Catherine saw one answer. That Catherine's very existence was the cause of his misery and misfortune. Catherine was surprised by this. She then entertained the idea of removing her existence in any world to give Heathcliff at least a chance of happiness. This variant, which seems to be a gestalt of all those Catherines that have died, seeing it as not too late, for the sake of all of the Heathcliffs that remain, they beckoned her to invite them into her world, so that she would die first, and so they could do the same with other Catherines. Catherine saw that the only heaven for Heathcliff was one where she no longer existed. She felt as if she was freed from a heavy burden, that she must do this, out of her love of Heathcliff, believing that he deserves to be happy. Then we find out that via Nellie, who had some connections within the backstreets, she bankrupted Hindley, making him gamble everything he had away, although based on his behaviour, he needed little encouragement to do so. I suspect that all she did was not postpone the inevitable, or rather accelerate what would have happened anyway. All this was so that Catherine could take the ownership of Wuthering Heights from him. Then she talked to a former Ring researcher that was under N-Corp's employ. Apparently they did similar experiments in the past. In District 14, although they didn't mention that, where as long as the laboratory is ready, it'll work out. Catherine understood. Yes, she understood, and the laboratory would be completed as requested. Price was not a matter of concern. They made it clear again that her identity will be overwritten by another, so she shouldn't be in that body when that happened, as full complete identities can be summoned only when the body is empty. The laboratory was installed in the basement to invite the Catherine variants into their world. She had Linton's help to acquire the Golden Bar. Then Herman made it clear that to summon a fully intact identity requires quite a bit of power. One Golden Bar wasn't enough to power it. Thankfully, they procured a Golden Bar of their own. No, Herman, actually you stole it from Limbus Company when they were weakened, doing all the hard work to take down the abnormality that had it on them. The Golden Bar, once installed on the roof, will collect the necessary energy and relay it to the Golden Bar installed in the laboratory. Catherine believed that Herman was so kind. Well, whatever she's doing this for, it's not out of kindness. It's out of scientific curiosity and advancement without any regard to the cost. At least, not for others. She made that much clear when she was working for the previous G-Corps. Catherine asked, what payment does she ask for? Herman made it clear that it's not about money to her. No, it's not about money. Apparently she wants to make a dough. This confused Catherine. Herman wanted a pure, uncontaminated dough. Then, sometime before the events of Chapter 6, Catherine understood that the experiment should be complete soon. She told Nellie that she didn't fear the ghosts because she didn't understand where they came from previously. Perhaps this was why Catherine was afraid of talking to Heathcliff, because she wasn't sure if she could understand his distant heart. The ghosts were variants of her from another world, implying that either Wuthering Heights was a part of the world where the walls of reality were weaker than most parts, where that would explain why they were seen there, or it could be because Catherine and Josephine have a perception that can look past the walls of reality and see variants of themselves from other worlds. Catherine understanding this better than Josephine. All those variants suffering in wretched pain, yet they still wandered, determined to end her life. Then Herman told her that after the lightning strikes 7 times upon the coffin, the path to the other world will open, summoning the Catherine from that world there. Catherine was certain that Linton would be happy, as he was doing this for one he loved so much. He understood that once the coffin closed, she won't ever open her eyes again. She knew this, but it wasn't the end. She'll always be watching over him, wherever he might be. He would follow her commands and do things as she willed it. Then Hermann said that a doe of such high purity can become pretty much anything. What she seeks is beyond that, something more primordial, something at the start of all things. Hermann wanted a different Heathcliff. Not the one that's left without a word and didn't care to return, but one that exists for her and only her. She then mentions that the river that flowed beneath Wuthering Heights will help greatly for them, making the possibility that the walls of reality being weaker there as more likely, and that Catherine and Josephine are just more sensitive to this than most. Apparently she won't be lost forever as the river stops the dead from moving on. She'll likely have a front row seat to all that would happen. Catherine didn't know what she meant, and she questioned why she was watching this happen, asking where she was. Could anyone hear her? Hermann told her not to worry. They'll make sure that the summoning ritual would be a resounding success, telling her to hold steadfast. This was all for the good of Heathcliff. Yeah. Anyone who says that something is for the good of something or someone else, my advice is to run for your life, as the last thing that it's for is for someone else's good. Then the gestalt of many different variants of Catherine appeared, all while Dante was reviving Heathcliff. When Heathcliff was back, he was surprised to see her. She was slowly pulled from the coffin that Earl King Heathcliff was carrying. Then the golden bar returned to the rooftop where he pulled it from. Catherine, or at least what appeared to be her, the one who Heathcliff wanted to reach, was walking out of the coffin. Heathcliff knew that this wasn't his Catherine. Dante realized that the seventh lightning had struck, which meant that she was overridden by a Catherine variant. Heathcliff was struggling to accept this. He's endured everything for her, all within the manor, both before he left and after he returned, along with everything that he suffered out there. The only reason why he's there in the first place was to see her again. Something had gone wrong, as the space surrounding Catherine, who was screaming and wailing, was bending and distorting. It was then revealed that this was a gestalt of many variants of Catherine who had lost their Heathcliff. She asked the Catherine of that world why she changed her mind, asking if she forgot their wish. She spent countless days and nights watching how Heathcliff suffered, the suffering that they inflicted upon him. Catherine told the Gestalt that, no, it's different. The only person who can tell her that is... The Gestalt asked if it really mattered to her. What happened to every Heathcliff in every world? Is she truly so selfish that she feels detached from the consequences? She saw her greatest miseries as Heathcliff's miseries. She watched and felt each from the beginning, seeing her regrets. Yes. A regretful thought in living, being herself. If all else sees her. Dante understood that the identity has gone wrong. Something was wrong with the summoning, likely because Catherine from their world had a reason to. Perhaps she saw what Heathcliff did in that vision of the past, where she considered what he could have done, if he was just a little more patient. Faust confirmed this. Catherine was indeed interfering with the summoning. Ishmael understood this as well. The Gestalt demanded that she not obstruct her, if her love for Heathcliff is true. King Heathcliff did not take this well. He cried out for Catherine to come to his embrace as the sky seemed to glitch out. The Gestalt Catherine cried out for him in turn, as the two realities seemed to blur between each other. He then decided to fight the damned dozen for interfering with this, especially Heathcliff. Then, after some clashes between them, which included summoned variants of those he had slain in other worlds, the two Heathcliffs clashed. The purple sky shifted to a white one, and the Gestalt Catherine, with two large spectral hands, appeared to confront the damned dozen. They had to take the hands down before they could take her down, and take her down they did. Once she was temporarily incapacitated, Dante heard an unfamiliar voice asking if they could hear her, asking if the sound was coming directly from the door. Well, they could hear sound coming from the golden bar in their head, and Heathcliff was asking if they heard it too. And he was exhausted in both body and mind from his battle. The golden bar that was on the rooftop was removed from his chest, yet the influence of it lingered. This voice appeared to be Catherine, at least according to Heathcliff. They both listened. She asked what was happening. It was not what she wished. Dante wanted to know what this was. Then Catherine never wanted to, made it clear to Heathcliff that she never wanted an obsessive Heathcliff. She wanted every Heathcliff to be happy and to erase her very existence, pleading for someone to help her, asking if anyone can hear her. If the check passed, Heathcliff responded to her, even with the storm of emotions within him, including sorrow, joy, and wrath. She couldn't hear his voice. Neither could hear each other. Heathcliff understood that it won't be that easy. The damned dozen continued to battle their enemy. This granted 10 SP for all, along with 2 haste for Heathcliff for the rest of the battle and 1 haste for the others for the rest of the battle. If the check failed, Dante and Heathcliff shouted as hard as they could, but none of their words reached her. Understanding that it wouldn't be that easy, they continued the battle. Heathcliff would vow that he'd shout as much as he needed to until she heard him. He will not run this time. The haste reward remains the same, but no SP was healed. Just as Heathcliff was about to charge at the Gestalt Catherine, reality shattered once again, and he was face to face with King Heathcliff once more, and the fight against him continued. This time he was riding a headless horse. Strange. It's usually a headless horseman. The horse is the one that's supposed to have the head. Then when Heathcliff was about to charge against his evil twin, reality shifted to the Gestalt Catherine, as the walls of reality became increasingly more unstable. After temporarily subduing the Catherine variant again, Dante heard Catherine's voice again. Catherine was regretting summoning that variant there. She wanted to erase all Catherines so that Heathcliff would never have to suffer again, thinking that he'd want the same. Heathcliff regretted running away instead of talking with her. He'd go back to that point if he could, asking if there's no way out of the trap that the variant had set for them. Just as Heathcliff wanted to talk to her, the variant demanded that she not obstruct her, that they promise that they'd kill all of them so that Heathcliff may find happiness. It was clear that they were fighting to control that body. Then a check appeared. and if passed by anyone but Heathcliff, the Chosen would leap forward towards the hand, surprising the variant. If it was Heathcliff that passed that check, he knew exactly what she meant. This reached Catherine. Then he demanded to the variant that she give back his cafe. And this also kept the variant off guard. In both cases, this healed Heathcliff by 10 SP. He could hit harder, and the Catherine variant would be bound by 2 and had 2 lower attack power for 4 turns. If failed by anyone but Heathcliff, then she would tell the Chosen to be gone, the Chosen barely avoiding the swinging hand. If failed by Heathcliff, he tried to reach Catherine, but the variant said, "Heathcliff? How could..." Then he barely managed to avoid the swinging hand. In both cases, this would just cause 2 bind to the hands for 4 turns. Then, as Heathcliff was about to charge at the Gestalt Catherine again, he was brought back to the fight against Earl King Heathcliff, who begs for Catherine to appear before him and tear him asunder, wanting to see her eyes as he expires. Then he gets back on his headless horse, and as he did that, Earl King Heathcliff decided to shove Heathcliff into the coffin where Catherine used to be. Heathcliff saw that he was in Catherine's coffin. It was cold and dark, understanding that she was trapped in that for his happiness. Ironic, because she hated the dark. All but Heathcliff were locked out of this check. And this check was scripted, as in, it couldn't go any other way. He said to her that if only he waited to hear all that she had to say and not run away, along with approaching her to talk to her, seeing himself as witless. But he didn't want to give up. He broke free of the coffin, much to the surprise of Earl King Heathcliff. Seeing this as pointless, he should have remained in there, suffocating in the worst regret of his life. Heathcliff told him to shut his trap. He's not running anymore, seeing it is possibly too late. But he'll take this chance before it passes forever, even if neither of them might not be happy. If words are left unsaid, none will be happy with any certainty. Kathy saw this as right. She shouldn't have wished for his happiness without talking to him first. Seeing her mistake, this fully healed Heathcliff's SP and healed the others by 15 SP. This changed determination to courage to approach. This healed Heathcliff by 10 SP each turn, along with being granted 3 attack power and 5 protection, where he even heals 5 SP each time he's hit, and he is granted more of the ability to hit the enemy harder, up to 3 times. He also has 3 attack power up if the SP that he has is 0 or lower, which will be much harder considering the buff he has at this point. And his HP won't drop below 1 as long as there's one other ally, at least, still fighting. They continued to fight, and when Earl King Heathcliff was starting to get desperate and throw a large object at him, Heathcliff manifested his Zayn EGO body sack, and they clashed with immense force, enough to knock Earl King Heathcliff off his horse. he didn't see any repose awaiting them. Then the golden bar grew brighter, and Dante was concerned with how this battle was going, saying to Faust that if things don't get any better, what will happen to them? She responded by saying that if Erlking Heathcliff succeeds in killing their Heathcliff in a way that makes them stay dead, he'll leap to other worlds to continue this cycle. If Catherine's summoning succeeds, she'll be another Catherine who leaps between worlds to create more like her. Dante asked to what end. Ishmael understood that the end would be nothing but the silence and the lamentation of both Heathcliff and Catherine. Then Dante noticed a sound coming from his device. It appeared to be coming from the Catherine of their world, who was chatting with them, who also knew Dante's name, and that they wrote a diary of their own. Dante wouldn't call it a diary, just a record of what happens, which Catherine saw as a diary. A record of their life. Dante then agreed with her. Catherine then spoke of just before the break of dawn, during the quietest hours of the day, she would write her diary. Especially on days when she suffered from fevers, she couldn't bear to keep going without vomiting every fault of hers on a piece of paper. She was always honest with her diary, but never honest anywhere else. She hid her true feelings from the one she loved, while refusing to communicate herself. She became angry at those that didn't understand her. She didn't think that Heathcliff should ever know. He shall never know how much he'll... Then, somehow, likely due to him stabbing himself with the golden bar, Heathcliff was able to join the chat and told her that he had to know. Catherine asked how did he... Heathcliff told her that it needed a lot of courage to get there, telling her that it's all so easy for her to topple him, to ground him up until he's nothing. He was so happy when she came to visit him. A single glance would brighten his day. Yet she was also a calamity. He always loved her, that very calamity that swept over him like a tempest. This stunned her into silence. Then she thanked him for having the courage. Their hearts are no longer broken apart. She then asked Dante if she can borrow his diary for a moment. The golden bar has powers beyond any of them that could ever imagine. Yes, beyond what any of them could ever imagine, rather. Yes, that's a better way of putting it. Dante wanted to know what she meant. Apparently, it can bring their own wishes to reality, specifically her wish to heal what was broken, telling them that it's the key to Heathcliff's happiness, the key that was in their diary. So Dante looked down on the screen of the device and then noticed a screen that booted up saying golden bar synchronized and not to touch to start, along with the option that says clear all cafe. Ah, a spoiler in plain sight. That's what she intended to do. Use the power of the golden bar to surgically remove herself from the multiverse. This has disturbing implications regarding Limbus Company's potential plans for them. We don't know what their end goal will be. As for Encore, considering that they have used drugged field rations for their Nuggle und Hammer to erode the wills of new recruits, they even drug those that haven't proven their loyalty to Encore, and they crack down on any that record video footage, along with having only white buildings in the nest. I doubt that they have any benevolent plans regarding them. I mean, imagine if someone like Lady Dias had access to the power of the golden bars, She could theoretically rewrite reality to make herself the undisputed ruler of the city, after removing the head without having to worry about any reprisals from arbiters or claws. A good thing that the Reverberation Ensemble wasn't aware of the golden bars. Imagine what they would do with them. Probably a stinking heap of their collective insanity. As all the Catherines were being erased from the multiverse, the Catherines thanked Heathcliff for being the first one to talk. Apparently, she didn't love every Heathcliff in every world, possibly because some of them killed her, or they never got close, or, well, it's not just the worlds that they never met, like possibly the Dicey Association variant of Heathcliff. Although she loved him as he is now, then we see a number of variations of Heathcliff and Catherine, including the Heathcliff who was in Queequeg's role, a Catherine who was in Carmen's role probably, the TLA variant of Heathcliff, and finally the Earl King Heathcliff and his Catherine. Throughout the multiverse, each Heathcliff and Catherine was calling out to each other, all for one last unseen embrace. Heathcliff wanted to be in her embrace again. He felt her presence. He knew that she was haunting him. She wasn't in the cold earth. She was right beside him. The Gestalt Catherine was asking why he refused to embrace her. He told her that he hasn't broken her heart. She did it herself, and in the process, she broke his. The Gestalt Catherine told him to come to her, to whisk her away, embrace her. The gust there was too cold, her body turning to ice. Only his warmth shall thaw the frost. As this was going on, millions of worlds made real by them were speeding before Dante. Every possibility of Heathcliff and Catherine. Most end in tragedy, suffering, and lamentation. But among the worlds in the multiverse, there was one that stood out. Outside Wuthering Heights was 2 gravestones marking where Heathcliff and Catherine were buried. Among the desolation of the forlorn moorlands were 2 that resembled Heathcliff and Catherine, gazing into each other's eyes, their mouths drawn into their sweetest, happiest smiles, their hearts connected despite everything. Hard to know if that was a world where Heathcliff and Catherine ended up together, and they were their children, or it was the case that one was Heathcliff's child and the other was Catherine's child. Okay, I'll save the comparison between the source material and the in-game story for the end. Now, seeing this shocked Earl King Heathcliff, seeing that he let his conviction blind himself to other possibilities. The last words of their opponents were bittersweet and hollow as they echoed into nothingness. As Earl King Heathcliff went back to his world, seeing that the events in the timeline have been altered. Catherine was disappearing in every world as though she was never there. When this was complete, this changed the possibilities in millions of worlds, although in many of them, some things didn't change. Mr. Earnshaw still took Heathcliff in from the back streets. Hindley was still full of scorn and hatred for Heathcliff. But without Catherine to be there, Heathcliff left Wuthering Heights sooner, as she was the only reason he would have stayed to endure the suffering there. They each lived different lives with different people. Lives that didn't involve being chained to the past, due to Catherine not being in existence. The Heathcliff of the world this started watched the worlds transform, watching as each lived different lives, and the existence of Catherine slowly fading from each. Dante was concerned. They understood if Heathcliff wanted to grab them by the collar and shout at them a stream of profanity that would make a certain foul-mouthed Scottish chef blush, as erasing Catherine throughout the multiverse was unimaginably terrible. Yet he was watching this in silence, to witness this, and remember. Then Nellie made them look in her direction. Heathcliff was asking if she was taking the golden bar. Nellie was atop the railings of the rooftop and gazing down at them. Dante saw that most of the others were either dead or unconscious. She took the golden bar from the rooftop. Nellie saw Heathcliff as a good, kind-hearted boy, believing that he'd understand, making it clear that she'll bring that to the one that first showed her the mirror shard. Yes, so it was Herman that supplied her with that mirror shard in the first place. So Nellie has decided to join with the rivals of Limbus Company. Well, they're rivals at best and their worst enemies at worst. Yes, Nellie is officially joining Encore. Heathcliff glared at Nellie. She told him that it'd be pointless to try and stop her on this occasion, as they fought battle after battle, pushed themselves to the brink of exhaustion. How would they stop her? One who has waited for that moment? Well, in that case you really are good fits for Encore, as so far they wait for others to do their dirty work and leap in to take the prize. When those that did do the dirty work are unable to fight back. Yet in your case, at least, when you fight them when they're at full strength, they could take you down relatively easily. And she made it clear that by the time that Dante revived everyone, she'd be long gone. Honestly, he gave her freedom and she used it to spit on his kindness and work against him and Limbus Company. He silently made it clear that she'll live long enough to regret her decision the next time that they meet, which will be on far less friendly terms, likely involving him doing what he might believe he should have done before they confronted Earl King Heathcliff. He then told her that he can't stop her now, but he'll get it all back. The golden bar, his Catherine. Then Nellie showed us that while Heathcliff and Dante were somehow immune from the multiversal existence wipe of Catherine, Nellie was not. She didn't understand anything of what he was talking about. Heathcliff decided not to clarify this, as it would likely be pointless, as that name no longer has any meaning to anyone but him and Dante. Nothing but an ink stain remains where she stood. She's never been clearer to him, so clear that she could never be erased. Nellie hoped that his desperate wish would come true someday, as it said that the golden bar can make any wish from any heart come true. She then left as Dante revived all those that needed to be revived. All that's left now for the Chapter 6 lore is the conclusion. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!